Public hearing.
I'm in support of my neighbors.
So had you just signed the wrong form?
Good evening. This is the regular meeting of the Scio Township Zoning Board of Appeals, December 21st, 2023. I'll call the meeting to order. And ask for Mr. Walsh, the secretary, to call the roll.
Oth,
Here.
Ramey,
Here.
Walsh, here, Shields,
Here.
Noel.
Here.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the swearing in. I would ask all the persons who are going to be giving any testimony at the time of the public hearing or presenting materials at all, to please stand and raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I solemnly swear to or affirm that the testimony I'll give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Or just say, let's do it easy. Just say I do.
I do.
Thank you. Okay, the witnesses have been sworn in. Next item on the agenda is public comment.
Make a slight change. I'd like to amend the agenda since we don't have a moving agenda on the
It's not
agenda.
even on there. Yeah, let's change the agenda slightly. First of all, the agenda has to be approved, and it's not done here on the agenda. So we will amend the agenda to allow for a approval of the agenda.
I move
Does
to
anyone
approve.
wish to?
Well, I would like to add a second amendment to the agenda.
Okay,
I would like to add, following the approval of the amended agenda, an item to vote for an interim secretary until we can elect a new one, since I am unable to fulfill the duties per the ZBA bylaws.
correct. And just for the record, Mr. Walsh has been appointed to the planning commission, and and he is also an officer, I understand, of the planning commission. So that under our rules of procedure, he cannot also hold a title of secretary or any office in the ZBA. So what we will have to do is correct, we're gonna have to vote for another secretary. So let's put that on the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Ramey, seconded by Mr. Shields to approve the agenda as amended to add a election of a new secretary to replace Mr. Walsh. Let's do a roll call on that.
Oth,
Yes.
Ramey,
Yes.
Walsh, yes, Shields,
Yes.
Noel.
Yes.
Okay, motion has been approved, and we'll do that.
I would then move to appoint an interim secretary. I move to appoint Patrick Shields as interim secretary.
Sounds
Second.
good to me.
Okay. Ms. Rainey has made a motion to essentially elect a secretary because Mr. Walsh is no longer qualified. And to elect Mr. Shields in his place, seconded by Ms. Knoll. Any discussion? Any other?
Are you willing to do it?
It doesn't make any difference. Really.
I'm just being nice.
Well, I don't think there is a choice here.
Well, there isn't actually.
Any event,
I did the math pretty quickly. It's last person standing.
that qualifies you to be a secretary.
You're exactly right. That's all it took.
Why don't we take a roll call on that?
Oth,
Yes.
Ramey,
Yes.
Walsh, yes, Shields,
Yes.
Noel.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Mr. Shields is now the new secretary and be doing the rest of the meetings
Be kind.
more here. We're also missing the communications portion on the agenda, so I'm going to, take the bull by the horns and just, comment on that. I did have some correspondence. I just want to read into the record. If you will recall, we've been advised that there's been a lawsuit against the township over a particular, denial of a request for variance, under the name of Eustace, Eustice. And I received an email from Mariah Fink, who's with Fink and Fink, the township attorney, as follows, and it's dated yesterday. Chairman Auth, I wanted to give you a brief update on the Eustace parentheses pool end parentheses ZBA appeal. The record on appeal was filed, both Eustace and Scio parentheses by me and filed a brief on appeal. Eustace then filed a response brief to Scio's brief. The oral argument is scheduled for January 24th, 2023. Please let me know if you have any questions and update your board as you deem appropriate. And signed by Mariah Fink. Anybody else with any communications or correspondence? Okay, the next item on the agenda is public comment. Citizens wishing to address the zoning board of appeals on matters which are not on the public hearing portion of the agenda or seek information on any other matters. Such oral presentations shall be limited to 3 minutes, except a representative or spokesperson of an organization shall have 5 minutes to address the board. Are there any persons, either here or by Zoom, who wish to make any public comment? No, anybody raising their hand on Zoom, Chris? Anybody here in the audience? Okay. Seeing no public comment, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is public hearing. Public hearing is variance number 23007. Kirk and Kelly Jackson, 2211 Scio Road, property H-08-09-300-013, to allow an expansion of a non-conforming accessory structure pursuant to section 36-75 of the Scio Township Codified Zoning Ordinances. And who will be speaking on behalf of the petitioner? Please come on up to the table here. And could you identify yourself for the record, please?
Sir, my name is Kirk Jackson.
Okay. Hello, Mr. Jackson.
Hi.
And who do you have here with you?
This is my lovely wife, Kelly Jackson.
And Kelly Jackson, very good. Let me go over the basic procedure that we use for the ZBA. Which is not completely etched in stone, but we try to follow it if we possibly can. And we've got new stuff here and all of my little Post-it notes are gone, so I have to find it again. Are gone. Mr. Wallace, will you help me out? You know all this stuff by heart. What section are we talking? Oh, I'm looking.
Yeah, it's up front.
I've got it. I apologize for not being completely prepared. Chairperson opens the public hearing by announcing the subject of the appeal. The petition by identifying the applicant's name, case number, specified request, and the general location of the subject property, which we already done that. I then summarize the procedure of the public hearing and how it goes. I'll call upon the petitioner or the petitioner's representative to present statements in support of the appeal, along with any supporting evidence. The petitioner, his or her agent or attorney may present his or her case, including presenting witnesses on his or her behalf. After which members of the ZBA shall report on any site inspection or any conversations with the petitioner which may have taken place. Members of the public who support the petitioner then speak and correspondence is read, after which members of the public who oppose the petitioner speak and correspondence is read. The chairperson may permit the petitioner a rebuttal within limits set by the chairperson. After which time the chairperson will, upon motion or the motion of any ZBA member, close the hearing or announce a continuation of the public hearing to another specified date and time if the hour is late or additional information is needed. It's after that time the ZBA deliberates the request and decides the issue. Or if further clarification is needed, the issue may be postponed to a future meeting. Which is a lot of wordage to say petitioner goes first and makes his or her case. We will question you about things usually as we go along a little bit. But everyone on the ZBA will be given an opportunity to ask any questions before the close of the public hearing. And you'll be able to present whoever you wish to say things on your behalf. So with that in mind, Mr. Jackson, why don't you go ahead or Ms. Jackson, whichever one wants to go first, please do so and make your case.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate you guys being here for us tonight. Like I said, my name is Kirk Jackson, my wife Kelly. We live at 2211 Scio Road, so right over here around the corner from the Township Hall. And we're here tonight to request a variance in order that we can build a garage on our property there to accommodate our cars. So for those of you who weren't able to come out and see our property, what we have right now is a single car detached garage that has a covered carport on the north side of it. That structure is the first structure that was on any of that property out there, as we've been able to determine back sometime maybe in the 50s is when it was built. And it sits about between 12 and 13 feet off the north boundary line of our property. Pretty cool historical building. It's got some cool stories behind it, but it's not really meeting our needs as far as the two of us having vehicles. And we have a couple of kids who are getting close to driving age now that we'd like to have space for them to park a car in here in the next few years. We're both looking at getting electric vehicles just for a myriad of different reasons, but one consideration we have with those is we'd like the ability to have those in a climate controlled structure, because as some of you guys may know, electric vehicles don't do quite as well in the wintertime, particularly when they are cold soaked, they're sitting outside. So they do lose a lot of range. We'd like the ability to park our cars indoors to do that. So to that end, we've been working for a couple of years here to come up with a way to build a garage that meets our needs. We tried ourselves to come up with a plan where we could put the garage due to the limitations of our property, particularly the location of our well and a lot of the mature trees that you guys that came out saw. We couldn't find a place ourselves on the property aside from where the current garage is to put a new structure. So we enlisted the help of an architect thinking he'd come in and the lights would come on, he'd tell us exactly where to put it. He came to the same conclusion that we did actually, that the only practical location for a new structure is directly in front of the existing garage. Unfortunately, that does continue the non-compliance of that structure, of that existing garage. But there's no real way that we can shift that structure without having to either move our well at a pretty extreme cost or cut down one or more of our fairly mature trees. That's what we're trying to avoid. We think that we can accomplish building that structure without undue impact on our neighbors, and we've got some support from them in this process. So again, we appreciate you guys being here to hear our case, and we look forward to answering any questions that you guys may have.
Okay, I just have some questions, but I wanted to get Mr. Luan on board here. Mr. Luan is the consultant who assists in ZBA matters as well as others. Doug, are you there? Oh, there you are.
I am here. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, yes, we can. I just wanted to go over the nature of the nonconformity here because, as I think we all agree, I'm gonna ask the petitioner if that's true, that there's a nonconformity here. Because of the, first of all, because of the, distance from the property line to the existing garage. But Doug, am I not correct that an additional nonconformity is the size of the lot? This is an A1, and I think A1's also minimum of 2.5, and that this one apparently is 2.2 acres. Is that correct?
That would be correct, that the lot itself would be a non-conforming lot. However, that wouldn't have an impact on a new structure. Even if the lot was vacant, and the lot existed prior to the current ordinance provisions, it would be considered a non-conforming lot of record and could be, you could build a house on the lot. So the acreage of the lot, while it is, you're correct, it's a non-conforming lot, that doesn't really impact this situation.
So the real nonconformity then, the real issue you're saying is the location of the proposed, the existing garage as well as the proposed addition to the garage to the north property line.
Yes, yeah, the north property line is approximately 12 feet. It's required to be 30 feet. If you go back in historical records, I think the applicant sort of alluded to it. I think there's some history to this structure, but if you look back on historical aerial photographs, that building is located there in the 60s, and maybe even before that. That's as far as I went back in the aerial photographs. And, zoning in Scio Township started roughly in the early to mid 70s. So this clearly predates local zoning, which makes it a legal non-conforming structure.
Okay. What about the overhang?
The overhangs,
That comes right up to the property line within 2 feet or so.
yeah, that's also non-conforming. They are requesting to add a garage structure in line with the existing garage, not the overhang. So yes, the overhang would not be permitted, and I'm not sure when that was constructed. Maybe the applicant knows the answer to that.
My best guess is the early 2000s. I think the same thing that the consultant did. I went back through old Google photos. We believe it was the past owners that we bought the house from in the early 2000s, but that's the best guess we have.
When did you folks purchase the property?
We bought it in fall of 2019. So we've been there about 4 years.
Why don't we go around and I don't mean to cut you off, Mr. Jackson. I assume that you had pretty much finished what you wanted to say, at least initially.
Absolutely, yeah.
Ms. Ramey, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions. I went out and looked at the property, did not speak with the property owner.
Okay. Ms. Knoll, did you look at the property as well?
I did. Went out and looked at the property. I have no questions for the applicant. I have a question for Doug.
Did you speak with the applicant?
Well, I called them to tell them I would be on their. We didn't discuss the property. So I just wanted to let them know I'd be walking around in their backyard.
I drove by there a couple of times, but I did not go on the property. I had no conversations.
But I had a question for Doug.
We'll get back to you in just a second. Let's just take care of this.
Twice. First time I got caught in traffic from the party of the next door neighbors. And then I went back to look at, you made a comment in your report that, or your application, that there were several other lots that had a similar problem. And then you said in a different spot, it was unique. So I was trying to reconcile those two comments. At any rate,
We'll get to that in a
Yeah.
minute. My question is, did you look at the property and did you have any conversations?
twice. Conversation
conversation?
myself. No, I didn't have a conversation.
Mr. Walsh, same question.
I was out at the property yesterday. I spoke with Mr. Jackson. He saw me walking down his driveway. He kindly pointed out what the stakes were for the property line and the spray paint where the corners of the garage, proposed garage would be. We also talked, it was a nice day for me to be out there taking a look and discuss 8-foot high fences to keep the deer out of his garden. But we didn't discuss this particular application.
Okay, great, thanks. Ms. Knoll, back to you. You had some questions?
For Doug, okay. Doug, here's my question. The applicant referenced other potential properties that had similar conditions. And in the Carlisle Wortman report from Laura Krebs, she didn't talk about any other properties in the area that were similarly situated. Do you know anything more about that?
I do not. Perhaps the applicant can shed a little light on other, similar setbacks. Yeah, I noticed in their application, they mentioned that also, but I do not know where those are located.
Ms. Knoll,
Sure, go.
do you want to ask the applicant
Sure.
the questions about, and just for the record, it's, the applicant in their application stated that, the properties at 2078, 2118, 2177, and 2255 Scio Road have similar conditions. So your question is not the applicant is expand on that.
Share a little more about that.
Of course. So the reason that I mentioned that in our application was I'm hoping to paint a picture kind of the neighborhood to let y'all know that I think what we're trying to do is not going to be exceptional compared to what else is done in the neighborhood. Because of the shape of these lots, they're long and kind of narrow, as well as the number of mature trees that we've got out there. Folks have to kind of work around those constraints to get accessory structures. And to do so, a lot of times, I think probably predating these specific zoning setbacks that we're under now, but those structures have been built well within that 30-foot setback.
And that was also one of my questions too, whether you know, or do you have any evidence that any of those property addresses have similar setback problems that you do, and have not obtained a variance?
I know that there are a lot of structures that are within that 30 feet. I don't know when they were built, so I can't comment to whether they were built as non-conforming or whether they're non-conforming structures in the same vein as our existing garage is, if that makes sense.
No, I understand. That's exactly what I was asking.
Okay, yeah, I don't know the build dates for any of those structures now.
Well, they could have been before the zoning ordinance, or they were done without a permit.
Sure. I'm gonna assume they were all done before.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. That's fine. But you're not aware of any variances being granted?
To my knowledge, no.
Ms. Knoll, any other questions?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Mr. Shields?
That was the main question I was focused on as well.
All right, anything else at this point? Mr. Walsh, any questions they have?
Talked about the existing structure being historic. Is it in reality historic or is it old? Because I guess my question is, a lot of this is taking into account the existing structure. If it's deemed historic and has to be kept, that's one thing. If it's historic and that it's old, but it doesn't necessarily have to stay, that may change the discussion.
From our perspective, the historical value of the structure is the fact that it does predate anything else in the local area there, and I think, you guys have that picture in the packet that we submitted that shows that. So there is value to that for us. We've had other neighbors express an interest in the fact that that structure predates everything there. Additionally, and this is kind of a personal thing for me a little bit, but I like woodworking and things like that, and the building is kind of unique in that the lumber and stuff that the building is made of is not modern dimensional lumber. Like you can tell this is old growth stuff. It's true to dimension lumber, built very roughly a long time ago. And to me, that adds a lot of value, and that's why I didn't want to go in and just knock that structure down and build something else.
Different question, again, talking about constraints. You've talked about the well, you've talked about mature trees. I noticed, and I didn't at the time, but looking at the pictures I took, are the power lines also a constraint?
You know, we were talking about that today, and she can probably talk more intelligently to that. She
Yeah,
measured
so
it.
currently the existing structure, the power pole is about 19 feet off of the structure, so I think it's within 15 feet. You're not supposed to build near the pole. We have guy wires that come down directly next to our existing structure. So there's not really space to bump that out to the side at all without getting into DTE. I don't know what they do.
And if it helps
I don't
you,
know either, but and I'm not trying to be mean here, but the burden is on you to make your case. And, if the, I mean, I have a belief that DT would change it, you'd have to pay for it, but that's about it. I don't know.
and I think that's a lot of our constraints that we have. Our well, for example, that's one of the big constraints that we're communicating here. That could be solved by throwing money at it, really. I mean, I talked to Cribley today, it would cost about $11,000 to move that well. So all of this stuff could be solved by throwing money at it, but for us, we view that as kind of an unnecessary hardship, and that's why we're applying for the variance by just kind of throwing money at the problem, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, follow-up question on the garage. How are you incorporating that in your plan? Just leaving it as it is, or?
So our intent is to build the new structure directly abutting the east face of the existing structure. We're gonna have it outside the climate controlled envelope of the new structure, and that's something we had thought about if we could use that old structure for one of our parking bays, if we could insulate that and everything. And in looking at the way that existing structure is constructed, we realized that it was gonna be pretty burdensome to insulate that, to really air seal that and make it sufficient for an EV and everything there. So we're gonna keep that structure on the backside of the new structure. And then we're gonna reside it to match the new structure there, kind of incorporate it into the building, kind of tie them together.
One of the sketches, it looked like it was modern.
Right, and that's, we didn't want to have final,
Love the history, but got them.
right.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Siding and roof.
The outside, I'm gonna keep that, we want to keep that kind of tied in with the new structure, so it just doesn't look out of place.
Sure.
Then the inside, we want to keep that bare wall, so you can see the kind of original timbers, that stuff that's been there since who knows when.
Thank you.
Sure.
So I'm still a little bit foggy on exactly where the new addition, if you want to call it that, to the existing garage is, and I'm looking at your drawings. Maybe, I guess I'm a little bit questioning, I don't know where it's supposed to go.
Okay, maybe the best page to look at, do you have page number 18, the top-down view of the entire lot that we have added on the location of the structure and then the well and the tree?
I don't have anything that's marked 18.
That's in the package.
It's one of the photos.
Oh, you mean one of the photographs?
Yeah, it's this one, it's page number 18 in the packet.
Okay, hold on, let me just. Yeah, okay.
So for me personally, that one cages me the best, if you look at that, the blue box on that
Yeah.
is the approximate footprint of the new garage. And
Where's-
you see,
That's, oh, I see.
you see the existing garage down there in the aerial photograph. And then we do have the architectural drawing there on the previous page as well, if that helps you visualize it a little
This
bit.
one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one I was having, there's too many lines on it.
Our architect got excited there.
So what would be the practical difficulty of putting the addition? Oh, well then, let me ask a different question. Mr. Luan, you might know it as well. With the proposed addition, what would be the distance between the addition and the property line?
12 feet,
Well, what is it now?
12, well, the garage is 12 feet, but the lean-to extends closer.
Oh, okay.
They're
I got it.
proposing to
Got it.
line this up with the wall of the garage, but the lean-to, as you see from that picture he referenced on page 18,
Yeah,
the lean-to is what's extending further.
I understand now.
So there'd be a longer area of 12-foot setback, but they wouldn't reduce the setback any.
If I may, our intent would actually be to reduce the setback by getting rid of that lean-to, because that would no longer
That was
be,
my next question.
yeah, because that would reduce the nonconformity. And I mean, we're not super comfortable with having our structure 1.8 feet away from our neighbor's property line anyway. That doesn't feel right to us, so.
Okay, you also have a witness that you want to offer here?
Yes, sir. This is our neighbor, Donna Palmer. She lives 2 doors down from us on the north side.
Ms. Palmer, what would you like to say?
I would like to say that, do you want me to come to the table first of all?
Please. Please, yeah.
I'm on the reverse side of this one. That's okay. I would like to see them be able to do what they're asking. Because all down that road, all of us have pretty large lots. We had just a smidgen under 3 acres. So they won't be impacting the neighbor, the Redmonds on their north side because of the way their house sits in their whole big front area. And I think that's what we try to do as a township, not to have everything crammed. So we feel like we're in a city when we're not. And I think in this case, it wouldn't impact the neighbors at all as far as letting them build a garage. I live without a garage.
And what name, what's the name?
Redmonds live right next door to, on the north side.
We have a letter here from Mr. Monty.
And I can help clarify that if you need.
That's the long driveway.
Yeah, you'll notice between,
Tweet.
directly adjacent to us on the north side, there's a long skinny driveway and then a property that opens in kind of a V shape. That's the Montes. So they're the directly north.
Correct.
So who are the other people?
Well, Redmonds live on the other side of this long skinny drive to the north. So it's a lot of wide open area.
You can see their property in that same page 18 picture that I just referenced. It's the one on the other side of the long skinny driveway there. And they have this farm field on the east side of it.
Has anyone discussed this with them?
Yeah, we've spoken with them. They have no complaints with it whatsoever.
Okay.
Can I make just one more statement?
I don't know.
May I make one more statement? Not like my teachers. I don't want to see any of the mature foliage compromised in any way. If that's, to me, very critical. I love trees. He's got two, well, they're in the front, but 100-year oak trees. Plus, he's got a flowering magnolia tree that any of us would die for. I would just like to be able to keep have them be able to keep the natural as much as possible, and yet give them what they need, a garage for their cars. That's why, I mean, I don't think they can reposition the garage without those things happening. So that's just my take on it.
Okay. Ms. Ramey, do you have any further questions?
I don't have any other questions.
Ms. Noel,
No other questions.
Mr. Walsh, Mr. Shields? Let me look at my notes to see if there's anything else.
No additional questions for the applicant.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Luan, I guess my question is directed to you, at least for discussion, wherever you went. Where'd you go? Mr. Luan, are you there?
Oh, yeah, I'm here.
Oh, good. The variance analysis that your folks prepared says that the proposal to construct the addition of the accessory structure includes an extension of the northern building wall 12 feet from the north side property line, a distance of 25.5 feet, requiring an 18-foot variance for expansion of the non-conforming accessory structure. Are you saying that the 18-foot proposed expansion doesn't expand the nonconformity?
Well, no, I mean, that's a good kind of philosophical question with regard to zoning boards of appeals. I've worked in other communities that would indicate that this request would not require a variance because it's not increasing the nonconformity. The nonconformity in this case, the 12-foot setback of the existing garage. However, that being said, Scio Township has always looked at these as requiring variances for as long as I know. So we kind of have to go by past history because past history means something with variance requests.
Well,
So-
don't worry, we're very aware of that on this board.
Yeah.
And
So,
the problem is, well.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna comment that the problem may be that if we're gonna be consistent in our rulings.
Yeah.
We have to take it into account.
Yeah, so it is, so Scio has always taken the position that any increase of a structure in the required setback requires a variance. So that's all we're trying to say here is that they are maintaining the existing non-conforming 12-foot setback and adding structure to that setback.
It's just more linear feet that are
Yes,
still 12 feet from the boundary.
it's not going any closer.
It's still an expansion, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I mean, and you call it philosophical, Mr. Luan, I'm not sure I would.
Well, I just
Well,
say that because I work in other communities that wouldn't call this a variance, but that's fine.
Which ones are those? Never mind, I'm not. That's spot on that. Let me ask you this, there were two alternatives that were proposed in your report. One, relocate the proposed structure further south, or two, reduce the size of the structure. But how are you saying that, you're basically saying that in those alternatives that you'd have to tear down the existing garage?
No, because you would, so the existing garage has a non-conforming setback that can just continue indefinitely. But what we're saying is that if the applicant wanted to build this in conformance with the ordinance, the new part of the garage would have to be shifted south and or reduced in size. And so so for example, if the applicant came to us, and the zoning ordinance supports this, so if the applicant came to the township with a zoning compliance certificate for a building permit, and it showed the new structure maintaining a 30-foot side yard setback, the zoning administrator could approve that. But because it's within the 30-foot setback is why we're here in front of the zoning board of appeals. So we just point out two possible options that could bring this proposal into conformance with the zoning ordinance.
Okay. Okay, I guess I don't have any further questions either. Anybody else?
Let me ask the applicant another question. In the drawing provided, it still shows the lean-to.
Yeah,
At this point is,
these are not finalized drawings as far as that part. That the lean-to is, we didn't honestly discover that how generally close it was until we had the survey done, and that was post these drawings being made, and we were like, yeah, we're not comfortable with that to begin with, so.
I just wanted to confirm that.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Anything else that the applicant wants to present?
I guess I can comment on the proposed solutions from the consultants as far as the shift southward or the reduction in size of the structure. As far as the shift southward goes, if you look at the drawings, it's a little challenging to tell, but the proposed structure sits about 11.5 feet away from our existing well right now. You guys may be aware that the setback requirement from a wellhead is 3 feet as a bare minimum. So that would only allow us to move the structure 8 feet south to begin with. And that still would be out of compliance with the property line setback that we're requesting the variance for. So that's why I'm not sure if the south shift would solve the problem. And then as far as the reduction in size goes, to do that would be having to change would go from a 3-car to a 2-car or less garage. And that's part of, it doesn't really meet what we need from a garage with 4 of us in the household. So that was kind of our response to that.
Okay. Anything else? All right, are there any persons who wish to support the petitioner, who would like to speak or send correspondence? Chris, anybody have a hand raised on Zoom?
No.
Anybody here in the audience? Okay. Are there any members of the public who oppose the petitioner who desire to speak or send correspondence? Raise your hand on Zoom or let us know here in the audience. No, nothing from anybody? Okay. You need any more time for a rebuttal?
I think I've said everything. Appreciate it.
Well, then I'd solicit a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Mr. Knoll, or excuse me, moved by Mr. Walsh, supported by Ms. Knoll to close the public hearing. All in favor? Well, let's call the roll.
Auth,
Yes.
Ramey,
Yes.
Walsh,
Yes.
Shields, yes, Noel.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Public hearing is closed, so we'll now deliberate.
Ask a clarification for Mr. Llewellyn.
Yes.
Llewellyn, rather, sorry. Are we talking just about 3675, or are we talking about 36,400 non-conforming structures?
36,398 and 400 and 404.
I think
And
this is really an expansion of an existing structure.
it
not
seems
a
like
new
it to
one.
me too. That's the problem that I have. So, and Ms. Lawan, typically we don't get very much elaboration on from Carlisle Wardman on the application of Article 36-13. When this is clearly a non-conforming structure and therefore would fall into that article, I would believe. Tell me where I'm wrong.
So can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, we have, and I'll put it in a different way. Sections 36-398, 36-400 and 36-404. At least in my opinion, the way I read it, are applicable here. Because we have a non-conforming structure, which is intended to be, as I understand it, enlarged. Or extended. I think extended, we might be able to agree on that, at least. And so the question then becomes, why aren't we analyzing this situation as far as those sections?
I think the way that I'll try to give you my thought on that, and so you can expand one of the section that I had mentioned allows the zoning administrator the possibility to expand a non-conforming structure. And that it says,
The zoning administrator?
yeah, so let me read the section here. And there's a big caveat there. So a single-family detached residential dwelling unit and accessory building may be expanded if approved by the zoning official, subject to the following requirements. Single-family residence shall be permitted in the use, which we're not really talking about that. In the second, the expansion shall meet all yard requirements of the zoning district in which it's located. So in this particular case, it's not meeting the yard requirements, so the zoning official can't approve it. But if it was, and at what I was alluding to before, if they could maintain a 30-foot setback, this could have just been approved by the zoning official.
Agreed.
And so the way we have looked at these in the past, that now that sub 2B can't be met, in that the yard requirement can't be met, we're looking at this as a simple setback variance. And that's how we've reviewed this. And that's how we reviewed these in the past. So this is not, so to answer your question, that's how this was looked at, as a setback variance.
Okay, well, that may explain why we don't get very much in the way of analysis from Carlisle Worthing when we have a non-conforming structure. But I'm sitting there reading it, and I'm willing to listen to anybody here about their opinions on it, but until and unless those sections are changed, then we're kind of, sort of have our hands tied. Yeah, and I know that we could still grant a variance and be in compliance. In fact, 36,404, so they support. I may have that wrong a little bit. 36,404. A4A. Yes, A4A requires a determination that the retention of the non-conforming building or structure is necessary for the proposed improvement, or that the requiring of removal of such building or structure would cause unnecessary hardship. And then sub B, that the proposed improvement is necessary for the continuation of activities on the property. Sub 3, that it won't adversely affect the public welfare. I think we can agree with sub C. I don't think there's any argument on that. So really, we're trying to analyze this from the rest of that section. At least that's the way I looked at it today.
Since we're in the discussion phase, I looked at it, whether it's 3675, just the setback, or whether we look at all the 36,398 through 404, the ordinances are pretty well written. I mean, if we just go by that, the answer is no. My question is, in a rural area, is a larger accessory building a substantial property right to deal with the fact that you've got a larger property to deal with? And if that's the case, given some of the limitations on this property, is that reason enough for us to say yes on this? Or do we go back and say our hands are tied based on the ordinance? And I don't have a firm answer on that. That's what I've been thinking about since I was out at the property and it wasn't necessarily for the EV vehicles. A 2-acre property takes a fair amount of additional items to maintain. Most families have 2 cars.
I'm not disagreeing.
No, I'm struggling with, we have the ability to say yes. The ordinances, though, are pretty clear.
So I've lost sleep the last couple nights about exactly those clauses. I think the directions are pretty clear. And
Well-
motivations behind them in the first paragraph are very clear.
The motivation as expressed in section 36-398 is very clear.
Yes.
But they seem to take it back a little bit. But in fairness to, I don't want to cut anybody off. I've been criticized for that before. So Ms. Knoll, Ms. Ramey, do you have any thoughts on this matter as we're discussing it?
do.
Please let us know.
I do. You know, I was intrigued by Doug's comment that in many municipalities or other townships, a ZBA granting of a variance wouldn't even be required in this situation. And I think we
Well-
have to use common sense and look at the total picture of here. As Donna said, there would be trees preserved. We have large lots in the neighborhood. This is a rural area. Having a 2-car garage may indeed be a property right for many people in our community. And when you go down the list of, in the analysis from Carlisle Wortman, the analysis over here, the list of variance considerations, I mean, I think this situation meets each consideration. And so I think the conditions exist here, sufficient conditions exist for us to grant this variance. I think sometimes it's easy to get lost in the details when maybe they're not so important in every situation. I mean, yes, these words are in our ordinance and words matter and I care about that. But I mean, there are some other extenuating circumstances here that require we to consider other variables in the situation, I think.
I agree almost completely with what Ms. Knoll just said. I think that 398 and the ordinances here that say you can't expand a non-conforming use and so on. That's what the ordinance says unless you get a variance. But that's what variances are for. So what we have to look at is, have we met the requirements of the variance? And I think this all comes down to, as I think you two were alluding to, the question of what do we mean by necessary? And I mean, in terms of actual necessity, food, air, and water, probably it. And anything else could be argued as discretionary. But I think that in a rural property, a building that's adequate to house the vehicles that a normal user of that property would want is a substantial property right and is necessary within the rule of reason. So I would find this meeting that requirement. I also think that to me, the big factor here is the fact that this is a pre-existing non-conformity. I mean, that really changes things. If you wanted to come in here and say, we've got to have a garage, and there wasn't one when we bought the property and we knew it, but we've decided we want to put one in, and then came forward with similar arguments, I think it might be a different situation. But here, the fact that I think there is a reasonable necessity to have a building that meets the kinds of requirements that you say. And it's not increasing the nonconformity in the sense that it's not getting any closer to the property line. It's just extending farther along it, but it's not getting any closer. And the fact that it will remove a nonconformity by getting rid of the lean-to, all to me factor into the decision where I would support granting the variance.
First of all, just one correction, it's really not a non-conforming use.
I'm sorry, a non-conforming structure. You're exactly right.
And I don't disagree with you, with either Ms. Knoll or Ms. Ramey, that a larger garage than what's existing now is probably a substantial property, right? Well, that's not an issue, is it?
I'm still struggling, but I would say that to Mr. Walsh's point about having all that property that you need, a lawnmower and all of that, riding mower, that makes sense, but this is for a third car, which is nitpicking in a way, but all the comments have really been around the equipment needed to manage a property like that, and this is for a car.
I didn't and we did deny a request for a 3-car garage a year or so ago, maybe 2, in a different area. And I still go along with that one. And I know there are a lot of differences between that one and this one.
Yeah. And that's not the most important thing probably, but it is part of the picture.
Yeah, yeah. Because really what I think with the size of the garage as proposed really has nothing to do with the non-conformity. I mean, or with the proposed non-conformity. it really doesn't matter anything, because you're going in the other direction in any event, and it doesn't have anything else to do with it. And one of the points that the applicant has made, and I understand it, is the location of the well, which really affects the overall analysis here, I think, because I think the applicant's right. I think that price, I hate to say it's probably right. I mean, or maybe it's a high end. I don't know. I hope it is.
I don't think so anymore.
But I think,
Chairperson,
Say that again?
yeah, could I add something to your conversation for a second?
Sure.
And this
So we
kind of,
cut you off.
yeah, this kind of piggybacks on to Commissioner Knoll's comment about kind of the unique nature, you know, of the site and kind of the agricultural nature of the site. So whenever I look at variances, and we can talk about whether this should be applied as a straight setback variance, kind of how our analysis looks at it, or as a non-conforming structure. But one of the things that we should always look at for variance is, you know, what's unique about this particular property that's different than other properties similarly zoned? You know, why can't, or, you know, what is different that the zoning board of appeals can hang their hat on? And in this particular case, if you look at the property itself, the side yard setback that we are discussing right now is not close to any adjacent home. The lot is, the adjacent lot to the north is so uniquely shaped with an access strip and then an odd angle that goes to a home. There will never be a home directly north of this property due to the shape of those parcels. When we're looking at variances, we're always trying to determine if there's some practical difficulty. And practical difficulty means something that's unique to the property that's different than other properties similarly zoned. In this particular case, the shape of the adjacent parcels is very different than it, you know, we're not talking about a string of rectangular lots where there's another home directly north, and we're trying to establish a setback so that the distance of a garage isn't going to affect the property to the north. There is no property to the north. There never will be a home to the north due to the shape of these parcels. So I think that, to kind of add to, I think what Kathy was trying to get at, I think this, if you're trying to determine something to hang your hat on to determine practical difficulty, I think you have to look at not only the agricultural nature of the property, but the shape of the properties to the north.
Well, okay, the way I look at it, and I'm trying to make it simpler, I think what you're saying makes it slightly more complex, and I'll just observe that, if the property to the north did not agree with this, proposal, then I'd probably give him a lot of credence. The truth is, though, he signed off on it, basically said it's okay with him, and that makes a big difference to me.
yes,
So if I think part of the zoning board of appeals responsibility is to protect adjacent or nearby properties for people who have not said anything one way or the other for a lot of different reasons. And had we not gotten that write-off from him, I would be looking at this pretty differently. So I guess I agree with you in a way, Mr. Lewis, believe it or not, but it's not important, that's what I'm saying, or it's not as important, had we not gotten.
I'll say that for me, I have struggled with I'm very rules-based. The rules are pretty clear. I think I now have a clear path to say that I'm okay with this. With your comments and Mr. Robbins. Nuance. It's very helpful.
I can make a motion if people are.
Yeah, anybody else have any other thing that they would like to express? Well,
I'm sorry, I interrupted you this time.
oh, you can interrupt me anytime. It makes no difference whatsoever. Unless, of course, I tell you it does,
Which you would.
which I no doubt would. Yeah.
We've talked in previous meetings about being consistent, and that comes into play, but we've also been trained that each of these decisions is unique. None of them sets precedent. So I'm willing to listen to some of the different discussion that we've had here that we may not have had in previous variances like this one and say, okay, I can take that into account in my decision making.
Yeah, I'm struggling also, as Mr. Shields no doubt is referring to the section 36-398. It says generally non-conforming structures shall not be enlarged, expanded, or extended except in conformity with this article. And it's expressed as that's the whole idea behind the philosophy between around non-conforming structures, that eventually you're going to get rid of them all. That's the idea of it. Well, we have allowed that in the past on
And
a
that's
couple
what
of
variance is
occasions.
for.
We have the authority to do it.
We do have the, I think we have the. The problem is, what do we do with 36 dash, 398 in the future?
If I could help with that as well. So 36-398 is primarily for, 36-398 is not a standard for the zoning board of appeals. It's a standard for township administration. We can't, the zoning administrator or building official using these sections, which they do, they can't approve what the applicant is proposing. And when that happens, the only outlet is you guys. The outlet is the zoning board of appeals. And so that's where we're at. I mean, that 36-398 is not a zoning board of appeals standard. They are now in front of you trying to meet the standards that are contained in our review letter. That, because now they can't meet that. You're right. You're totally right. They can't meet that standard plus several others in the non-conforming section. That's why they're in front of the zoning board of appeals. The township appropriately denied their zoning request. And now their only option is a variance, and that variance has to meet those standards contained in the section of the zoning ordinance that talks about zoning boards of appeals. So that's how I would respond to that.
If you're trying to say that section doesn't have to be taken into account by the zoning board of appeals, I disagree strongly. I'm sorry, Doug, but
Yeah. I'm
I
not saying
really
this,
do.
but that's not a zoning board of appeals section. That's
It doesn't make any difference. The zoning board of appeals article also talks about the general ordinances of the township. And we can have this discussion another time. I don't want to belabor it here. I'm just saying that part of your opinion, I can't go along with. And I haven't compared the statutory reference to it, but I'll bet you dollars to donuts, I think I've looked at it before, that it's gonna be a state statute as well, so. If you talk about the hierarchy of application, ordinances, administrative rules and statutes, well, you're talking statutes then. So, anyway, I don't think we have to go there on this one, but I think it's maybe a discussion we should have later, so we all have kind of understanding. That's all. At least that's my opinion. Okay, anybody else?
You have a motion?
I will make a motion.
Okay, motion, go ahead, Ms. Rain.
I will move to approve the variance 23007 Jackson expansion of non-conforming structure for 2211 Scio Road for an 18-foot reduction, allowing a 12-foot side yard setback rather than the required 30-foot side yard setback in accordance with section 3675 to allow expansion of a non-conforming accessory structure. The requested variance should be granted due to the following findings of fact. Number one, there are exceptional circumstances or conditions applicable to the property that do not apply generally to other properties or classes of use in the same district. In that this is a previously existing non-conforming structure with some historical value. It is located adjacent to a well and mature trees that preclude other locations to build or expand. And the property to the north is configured in such a way that the having a construction that cuts into the setback will not adversely affect the property directly to the north. It's unlikely that anyone would be able to build any home or other structure that would be adversely affected by the location of the proposed expansion. Number two, the variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of a substantial property right possessed by property in the same zone and vicinity, in that a larger garage in a rural property of this nature is a reasonable use of the property. And the existing structure is unreasonably small for modern day use of this type of rural property. Number three, the granting of the variance will not be material detrimental to the public welfare or materially injurious to the property or improvements in the zone or district in which the property is located. And we have noted that there are trees that screen the entire boundary. And there is a letter in support from the neighbor to the north and testimony in support from another neighbor here tonight. Number four, the granting of the variance will not adversely affect the purpose or objectives of the master plan of the township. And five, absent exceptional circumstances, which would otherwise result in substantial injustice, the circumstances or conditions upon which the variance is based do not result from the actions of the applicant or the predecessors in title, because this was a pre-existing non-conforming structure.
Okay, motion to approve, made by Ms. Ramey, supported by Ms. Knoll. I'd like to have some discussion about that. Mr.
I was
Wallace?
wondering if I could propose a conditional amendment.
Yes,
That the approval is conditional on the removing of the lean-to the north. Not the northern face or the northern strip between the garage and the property line be kept green, not cemented over or path around it.
Okay, let me understand. Conditioned, but before you respond, let me just get, so my notes are correct. It's conditioned, Mr. Walsh, as to the removal of the lean-to on the north side of the garage, existing
Yes.
garage. And to keep the area,
Space between the proposed setback 12 feet and the property line natural, I guess is a better way of putting it. I'm not concerned whether it's grass, shrubs, or whatever, but prefer it not to be paved around. But that doesn't have to be accepted. That's,
I will amend my motion to include those two conditions.
okay.
And I'll support.
So we have a motion to approve the amended, a motion for an amendment to the, for the approval of the variance. conditioned on the removal of the lean-to on the north side of the garage, the existing garage, and that the space between the setback and the property line be kept in a natural state.
Something along those lines.
And then paved over.
Right.
Okay. Any discussion further on that? I'm gonna vote in favor of your motion, Ms. Ramey, but I'm just gonna say for the record that I don't really agree with your conclusion that the garage has historical value. I'm sorry, I can't do it. But even taking that out, I'll vote in favor of it. Any other discussion? All right, call the roll.
Goff,
Yes.
Remy,
Yes,
Welch,
Yes.
Shields, yes, no,
Yes.
Okay, the motion is, or the variance is granted. I'll give you an approval that, or a decision with that approval in just a moment, if you bear with me. Today's 21st. Yeah, I'm sorry for that long discussion, but
This is how we do business.
we're trying to achieve some consistency
I
and
spent so many weeks reading through the ordinance and reading through you guys' policies that it's like, it's nice to see it in action and everything like that, so. We do appreciate it.
did you understand the struggles we were going through?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly in direct agreement with you as far as like the rules based and the role of the ZBA as kind of the relief valve for, you gotta have some deviation from that sometimes, so. Yeah, it's good to see.
Interesting discussion.
okay, good luck. You don't have to stick around any farther, but you're welcome to if you wish.
Got a couple of kids at home burning the place down around.
I'll stay with you. You can stay with.
It does, it really does.
Have the burning garage.
Now we'll be back to build something else.
Would you want to save floors? So that's a little hard to get.
That's right.
Right.
All right, well, thank you guys very much. Have a great night.
Good luck.
When do you think you have it done?
We're gonna start hopefully in the spring with building it, so hopefully midsummer. We've been trying,
Take a look.
please do,
Yeah,
we're always welcome.
absolutely.
good luck.
All right,
Thank
thank you
you.
guys, Merry Christmas.
Pat, I'm gonna give you, I'm gonna keep one copy here and keep it in my binder. The others, would you, you're gonna give it to Fran. And,
I have to explain my process
on what?
and how I've handled this.
Oh, yeah, why don't you take a moment while I get the rest of it done?
I usually take my binder home, just so I have all the reference items.
Mhm.
Because they've given us the pro forma word, rather than have them try to interpret my chicken scratch, which is really bad. Type it out, I send them an electronic copy. Then I bring my binder in with the signed forms and anything else. If you have extra exhibits, I came in that are
Those
specific.
documents there.
I leave that.
They just picked those.
They pick those
That
up
was-
next.
that was you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Okay, we're ready to move on. Next item on the agenda is old business, of which I don't think I have any. Nothing comes to mind. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of, start with, October 19th, 2023. Does anybody have any corrections, additions, or anything to do with that?
Yes.
In the motion?
No.
I didn't see any myself.
I didn't either. I moved to approve the minutes of October 19th. 2023.
18th.
It says the 19th.
It says 18th.
Way to find out.
For what?
This draft says the 19th, and then it say the 18th. I mean, this draft says the 18th. And then it said the 19th.
I don't, oh,
But it was the 19th. 19th was a Thursday.
okay.
Right.
All right, so there's a motion on the floor to approve the minutes of October 2023. Do I have a second? Second by Ms., the motion was made by Mr. Walsh, seconded by, Ms. Knoll. Any discussion? All right, call the roll.
Off,
Yes.
Ramey,
Yes.
Walsh,
Yes.
Shields, yes. Noel,
Yes.
Okay, there's also an approval of the information minutes of November 16th, 2023, but there was no meeting, so we have a motion to approve the no meeting.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Walsh. and
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Ramey. Any discussion? Okay, can we call the roll on that?
Off,
Yes.
Ramey,
Yes.
Walsh,
Yes.
Shields. Yes, Noel,
Yes.
Okay, next item on the agenda is other business. Do we have any information of our planning commission liaison? Have you had a meeting?
We had a meeting.
Oh,
Uh,
how'd it go?
It was an orientation meeting because the planning commission has 3 new people. Myself, Ryan Yapel and Andrea Rothney. We also had elections. Jan Culbertson remained the chair, Bob I remained vice chair. I was elected secretary, as we covered earlier. And the meeting was essentially getting new member orientation from Carlisle Wardman on what we should be looking to learn about and reference materials before our January meeting, when likely Firestone comes back before us.
Firestone?
That's a proposed Firestone minor auto repair that'll be on a lot, I guess, adjacent to Culver's, I believe, on Jackson Road.
Oh, really?
Yep.
They're gonna change that awful sign and make it move back so when you're leaving Lowe's, you can actually see what the oncoming traffic without putting your nose of your car into the Jackson Road.
You should be aware, you should be aware, Mr. Chair, that changing a non-conforming can be very difficult.
Well, what happens if it's falling over?
Well, then we get into replacing and substituting, and then different ordinances come in.
so are you thinking about hitting it?
No, every time I go over there, I gingerly go past the sign.
What are they building at the end of Baker Road?
Thank you.
That was, Jan told me last time I talked to her, that it was,
Is it by Tractor Supply?
it's across the,
Across the
no, no,
The
no,
one
not
on,
the,
the one
I
on,
mean, are you talking about the real big one?
They're real big one.
Oh, the real big one, that's mixed use,
Is it Heritage Woods?
yeah.
yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Is that a mixed
Yes.
use residential and
Well,
commercial?
it's residential and assisted living and some nursing care. It's a sort of
senior
a graded, it's a senior community, but there are also residential units
Mhm.
for non-seniors.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
And it has an on-site community wastewater treatment plant. It was very controversial. This almost didn't pass the board level. The vote was 4-3.
I thought you meant across the road from them. That is a car wash,
Oh, okay,
is what I've been,
yeah.
well, another Jiffy, I think.
Yes,
think that's what
it
you
is. It's
told me.
another of the same type.
You're exceeding my knowledge base. I've got a very,
I'm not gonna put you on the spot.
Huh.
Okay, the next, item on the agenda is possible action and approval of meeting dates for 2024. They're in our packet, something. And I think that they're just the standard,
Third Thursday?
yeah, it's just,
Yeah, I don't have
this, for some reason, I thought there was automatic, but I guess
It's in the
the new-
Under other.
this is another tab.
it's,
Oh, okay.
but it's, oh, here it is. In any event, I think it's kind of standard and uniform. So I solicited a motion to approve the draft 2024 schedule of meetings, the CBA.
So moved.
I'll support.
Moved by Mr. Shields, supported by Mr. Wallace, call the roll. Yes.
What do you mean?
Yes,
Walsh,
Yes.
Shields? Yes. Respond. He's very slow to respond. No,
Yes.
Okay, motion, passes. Anything else by anybody? Questions, comments? No? Then I'll solicit a motion for an adjournment.
We have a public comment at the end previously.
We had, no, they moved it up. Okay, they moved it up and we already had the public comment.
so move to adjourn.
Support.
Motion to adjourn by Ms. Ramey, supported by Mr. Walsh. Call the roll. Yeah.
what do you mean?
Yes.
Walsh,
Yes.
Shields? Yes, no.
Yes.
Okay, we're adjourned. Mr. Luan, are you still with us? No?
I am, yes.
Okay, well, I just wanted to say thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. I know that you've been a little under the weather. I hope everything's going well. Wish you Merry Christmas.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm feeling better than I probably have the right to feel.
Good for you. Well, keep
Yeah.
up the good work.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
And Laura's doing quite well, so no rush to get back to work.
Yeah, that's what I hear. I hear Laura's doing a great job, so.
Actually, she is, so.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, yeah, I had some surgery that kind of came out of nowhere based on